If you were a student in Singapore in the 80s or 90s, this was probably the most difficult thing you had to do every day. No, not this. Or this. I mean this. Cita, cita, cita yang mulia. Why was the national anthem so hard to sing? And what changed in 2001 that saved Majulah Singapura?
I would have to sing really quite high. Marilah kita. It's like all the way up there.
This is Ng Tian Hui. He's a music director for opera companies like Whitesnake Project, the New England Philharmonic, and the Pioneer Valley Symphony.
And finally, I'm professor of music at Mount Holyoke College, where I teach conducting and things associated with opera and music history.
He's also this guy.
I think the first part is when we talk about human voice, right? And how high your voice is and how low your voice is, that there is roughly a normal distribution of voices, which means that there are some people with very low voices and some people with very high voices, and most of us are somewhere in the middle, like the classic bell curve, right? So when you write a song that you want to be sung by a lot of people, whatever key you choose, you want to make sure that the bulk of the melody is exactly where people are comfortable singing.
A key is the set of notes that a song mostly uses. Each key has a main note, called the tonic, and the symbols to the left of the clef tell you which notes should be played as a flat or as a sharp.
In the original G major key, I would have to sing really quite high. Marilah kita. It's like all the way up there. And if you are a teenage boy and your voice just broke, that range of like C, D, E, F above middle C, like that range is really rather high for most baritones.
So why was the national anthem written in the key of G major in the first place?
G major, for example, is a customary key of celebration. It is a happy key. From a playing perspective, it has only one sharp. So, like if you were playing on a keyboard and you were trying to teach people and you have basic access to things like that, it's a pretty friendly key. So I can imagine if I was asked to write a piece in 1964, 1965 for, the newly birthed nation of Singapore, I might be more keen to choose a key that symbolizes happiness. And so I can kind of see how G major was like a compromise.
In 2001, after decades of straining adolescent voices, the Singapore government officially changed the key of the anthem from G major to F major, with the rearrangements and orchestrations ultimately performed by Singaporean composer Ng Tian.
I remember the point when Ng Tian's arrangement came out, and I was like, oh yeah, finally, this makes sense. But how F major ultimately is just more comfortable for us to sing. And the thing is that, if it's in F major, then immediately that chorus of G, G, C, E, E becomes F, F, B flat, D, D. It's just that much more comfortable. I think the complication here is also that there is this age-old thing of musical symbolism. That there are meanings ascribed to particular keys. It's like D minor is associated with the Requiem text, and therefore, something for mourning. D major is often used for victory over something. Wellington's victory with like Beethoven, for example, would be in D major. F major is, traditionally associated with pastoral. Literally Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony number 6.
So the change in the key signature made it easier to sing, but it also imparted a subtle evolution in the emotions of the anthem. From the excitement, celebration, and also fear of a new country, freshly independent, to the inclusion and introspection of a confident people taking stock of our country and just how far we've come.
There was a certain kind of stateliness about Ng Tian's arrangement. The classic version, the G major that we sang throughout our school days, the opening introduction does not have a it doesn't have a flourish. And now if you look at Ng Tian's version, it's 1, 2, 3. right? So there is this flourish that happens, and it introduces a certain kind of festiveness to it, right? Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite additions to the Punutian version of the anthem is how there is this trumpet fanfare. When you look at the melody, da 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 dee 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 da da dee da 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 dee da 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 dee. So there is a kind of moment of inflection in that first phrase of the melody, right? And which is exactly where he adds da 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 da, like in the solo trumpet. That they're using what we would call fanfare figurations, right? The connection of this dun da 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 da, for example, this da 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 da, is something that you could trace as far back as like in the 17th century, and they use these dotted rhythms and these fanfare things to express power, and they are also related to bugle calls on the battlegrounds, and the net result is something that is much more symphonic, much more euphonious, much larger, much grander.
But there's one thing that we didn't change: the words.
I would refer you to a wonderful work by a colleague of mine called David Lang called National Anthems. And what he did was he did a study of national anthems across the world. He distilled the common things that kept coming up in all of these different national anthems. And they emphasize the blood of their enemies. They emphasize destroying others. This national anthem doesn't do that. It's talking about going forward together. It is actually in that way a very peaceful, peace-loving anthem that nevertheless is encouraging everybody to go forwards and to seek kind of growth. It's like, come fellow Singaporeans, right? Considering that concept didn't exist before 1965, it's quite a notable thing in its choice, and really rather beautiful.